Broadcasting live from Jackson and State in Chicago's Loop, it's Radio DePaul Sports and Entertainment.
You're listening to RDSE, where sports and showbiz meet.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Scoreboard, presented by RDSE, and I'm your host, Michael Lyons. And conference finals have finally started for both the Western and Eastern Conference, and it's been amazing to start. But before we get to those, we're going to talk a little bit about what's been going on in the NBA the last couple of days. Obviously, first things first, we saw Shai Gilgeous-Alexander win his first NBA MVP. And I've been on Team Shai for MVP all season long. I mean, the Thunder have been so dominant, and he's the best player on the best team. And yeah, Nikola Jokic had an amazing season, and no disrespect to him, I just believe that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was the best player in the league this year. Now, you can have your arguments for why or why not, and I can understand if you pick Nikola Jokic as your best player or if you pick Shai. But for me, I thought Shai, best player on the best team, and I mean, 32, 6, and 5 on 52% shooting. He had an amazing year, and you can't disrespect Shai for what he's done this year. Yes, you can be a little annoyed about the fouls, but people, this is my reaction to people talking about foul baiting. So many people do it, but it's when you're at the top of the game, that's when they have a problem with it. Shai, yeah, he shot the most free throws all year. Yeah, some of the fouls are bad, but that's just him. That's him putting himself in a position to get fouled and draw a foul. Yes, foul baiting has always been a thing, but it's something you can't get rid of. It's part of the game. Kobe Bryant, who a lot of people look up to, was just as much of a foul baiter as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. James Harden at his peak when he won an MVP was the same exact thing. And not even just all-time players, but people in the playoffs right now. Jalen Brunson for the New York Knicks is just as much of a foul baiter as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It's just Shai's 6'5" and he's MVP conversation. That's when people have a disagreement with it. But if it's Jalen Brunson doing it for the New York Knicks to get them past into the Eastern Conference Finals, nobody has a problem with it. It's just annoying, and it's a one-sided conversation when it comes to foul baiting, because then people are okay with some people doing it, but others not. But shout out to Shai, amazing year. Just looking at his stats again, 32.7 points per game, first in the NBA for that. 6.4 assists, 14th, and then 5 rebounds, shooting 52% from the field and 37.5% from the three-point line on 5 attempts a game. And then, as well as having a block and almost 2 steals a game. Shai, I mean, he was just a monster all year. He didn't play in the fourth quarter of 20 games this year, showing just how dominant the Thunder were all year in spite of injuries, with Chet going down, J-Dub missed some time, Hartenstein, all these guys missing some time, and Shai was just a constant player. I mean, he played 76 games, so he missed 6 games all year, and didn't play in 20 fourth quarters and still put up the most points in the NBA. So, got to give Shai his love, got to give Shai his flowers. For Nikola Jokic, yeah, I mean, he averaged a triple-double all year long. First center to ever do it. Wilt Chamberlain-like numbers. So, I mean, Jokic also an amazing year. And I was talking to somebody about this. If there was ever a year to have co-MVPs, I think this year was the year to do that. Because, I mean, Jokic was top 3 in points, rebounds, and assists all year long and shot 58% from the field. But the Nuggets just as a team weren't that good. So it's tough to say that you can give it to a guy that was 4th in the Western Conference, about like 14 or 15 games back from or 18 games back from the OKC Thunder. So that's where the conversation gets iffy for me. Jokic been dominant all year, deserves all of his praise and love, and I mean, he's gonna win another MVP before he retires. So, but this is not a Joel Embiid type of MVP award because Shea just as much deserves it as Nikola Jokic, whereas Joel Embiid was not the best player on the best team here that he won. So, and the Thunder, 68 wins this year. That's 5th all-time in wins in a season. So, got to give him his love. And then after MVP, all defensive teams have been announced. First team we saw Dyson Daniels, 100% deserving. Lou Dort, Draymond Green, Evan Mobley, and Amen Thompson. Now, obviously, there's some guys that didn't make all defensive teams due to injuries or due to not playing enough minutes. Like on the second team, we saw Toumani Camara, Rudy Gobert, Jaren Jackson Jr., J-Dub, and Ivica Zubac. Two super solid all-defensive teams. I don't really have too much of a problem with either one of them. Obviously, Victor Wembanyama would have been on first team and would have won Defensive Player of the Year if he had the games requirements. And then on the second team, I believe that Chris Dunn should have been there, but he did not play enough minutes. And then if you want to bring that conversation up again, Alex Caruso has been probably the most, and this is just in the playoffs. If the playoffs had an all-defensive team, Alex Caruso would be on the first team, but he just didn't play enough minutes in the regular season. But I saw some people had conversations of OG Anunoby should have been on the second team over Toumani Camara and J-Dub. Yeah, I could see that, but I don't know. I like that Camara got his love being on Portland. Guys don't get a lot of love out there, and he was an amazing defender all year long. Would have liked to see my boy Keon, but Keon Ellis will be on the line on all defensive team next year. That's it for this MVP conversation and all defensive teams. We're just gonna jump right into the playoffs and just talk about it all episode. Actually, Mike Malone, ex-Nuggets head coach who got fired, I like that he joined ESPN's broadcasting crew, and he does the halftime show, NBA Countdown. I like that before the game yesterday, before Shea got his MVP award in front of all the fans, where Mike Malone was like, if I had a vote, I would have picked Jokic. And it just shows that Mike Malone still has love for Nikola Jokic, and arguably it was just an ownership problem and not a Nikola Jokic versus Mike Malone problem. So people can settle down with the whole Nikola Jokic being a diva conversation. But right back into, we're going to talk about the playoffs all episode. Now, conference final. Actually, Sunday, we saw the Oklahoma City Thunder just destroy the Denver Nuggets in Game 7 to move on to the Western Conference Finals, a 125-93 victory for the OKC Thunder. This game, Aaron Gordon was dealing with a hamstring strain, but he played through it. MPJ didn't really give him much. Nikola Jokic really struggled this game, only got off 9 shots and had 20 points. But Alex Caruso, like I was saying, should be on a playoff all-defensive team. He made life just incredibly difficult for Nikola Jokic. He was not letting him catch the ball at all. Just constant pressure whenever Nikola Jokic stepped inside the three-point line. And that Thunder team, they were just on one. Shea had 35. J-Dub had 24 off the bench. Alex Caruso had 11, which he's been super good this whole postseason. He's been hitting his shots all postseason long. Aaron Wiggins kind of struggled off the bench. Cason Wallace struggled off the bench. But they were just an all-around great defensive performance from the OKC Thunder. And they handled business in Game 7. And arguably won Shea that award, even though the voting was already done for. But I think if you look at that game and I still think you can argue that Shea still deserved that award over Nikola Jokic, and that's how I see it. Enough of the MVP talks, but OKC in this game shot 49% from the field, forced 23 turnovers from the Denver Nuggets, and had 37 points off of the turnovers they forced, and 64 points in the paint, And, yeah, 16 steals for the Thunder. They were just dominant and just flying around the court whenever they had the chance. And moving on to the Western Conference Finals, which is the Timberwolves versus the Thunder. The Thunder are doing the same exact thing that they were doing against the Denver Nuggets. Game 1, we saw the Thunder get a 114-18 victory, which hopefully this is the Timberwolves' worst game. I said before, I hope the Timberwolves don't have one of those 80-point games like they've had in the first 2 series that lost them both games. Hopefully that was just the game that Minnesota just kind of brushed over, rusty, and can move on, which in Game 2 they moved on a little bit better, but we'll talk about that after Game 1. 114-88 victory for the Denver Nuggets, or for the Oklahoma City Thunder, led by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had 31 points. J-Dub had 19. Chet Holmgren had 15. Both of them came alive. J-Dub in the third quarter, Chet in the fourth quarter, when the game was still a little close, and then they kind of just pulled it away. And biggest conversation, Rudy Gobert in these first 2 games for the Minnesota Timberwolves has been really bad. And I give Rudy Gobert a lot of love, and I defend Rudy Gobert a lot from people that say he is overrated, doesn't deserve his 4 Defensive Player of the Years. But when he's so bad on the defensive end, or when he's so bad on the offensive end, and he's not giving you anything on the defensive end, it's hard to deny him being overrated at this point. I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to agree with people that Rudy Gobert is becoming overrated. And, in Game 1, he gives you 2 points, 1 block, 1 steal, 3 rebounds in 21 minutes. He's 7'4" and gave you 3 rebounds in 21 minutes. He had 2 fouls early in the first 2 minutes for Rudy Gobert, so after that, it just looked bad. Every time he caught the ball and tried to go up for a layup, he's smoking it, even though he's right there at the rim. So it's very frustrating to watch Rudy Gobert because he could be so good on the offensive end just by being just standing there ready for the ball and not forcing himself into tough layups. Like he shies away from contact when he's going for a layup. He understands that makes it easier for the defensive player because he is an amazing defensive player. 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. You know, if you fade away in the paint on a layup as a not skilled big man, that makes that shot 100 times tougher for you than if you just go straight up and try to go through the player and hopefully draw a foul. Now, you've been bad from the free throw line your whole career, which you need to learn how to. Big men, I don't understand how you are an NBA player for your whole life. You play basketball your whole life. You get to the highest level and you can't make a free throw. It's really getting annoying seeing Rudy Gobert, seeing Mitchell Robinson. Like, these guys are so, what do they work on in the offseason? This is what, if you're so bad from the free throw line, this is what you should be working on all offseason. Because if you don't, like Mitchell Robinson, like we've seen in the Celtics series, and they're just going to put you at the free throw line and make you make your free throws because you don't work on them. It's just annoying. I feel like big men don't rely on working on the free throws that they should be working on. But that's a different conversation for how some people's work ethic annoys me a little bit, especially when you're 7 foot tall and you could basically reach out and grab the rim, but you can't make a free throw. It's just go in the offseason and shoot 100, 200 free throws a day. You'll get better at shooting free throws. It's really not that difficult. Now it comes to the point where in the clutch, yeah, we're not going to put the ball in your hand, but like it's frustrating to watch. Early in this game for the Thunder, I mean, they drew 3 fouls and had 7 free throws in the first 6 minutes, and this was all from Shea, which a couple of them did look a little questionable, but then there was other ones where he got completely bumped off of his line and didn't get any free throws for it. So he's not getting every single call when he's in the paint and when he's going for a drive or anything. It's just when he is getting fouled, it is a foul, but sometimes it's a soft foul. So yeah, that looked bad for the foul baiting. We saw Doris Burke say this is why people on Twitter and Instagram call him a foul baiter. Just kind of digging into Shea a little bit, but Shea don't care. 6 turnovers in the first 9 minutes for the Wolves in the first quarter, which led to a lot of transition buckets for the OKC Thunder, which early in this game, what I saw from the Minnesota Timberwolves was like the Wolves, when their half-court defense was set, especially in the first quarter, they were really good. They were forcing the Thunder into bad shots, and they were just rotating very well. But it was when they were getting into transition off of their 6 turnovers, off of bad misses, that the Thunder were getting early offense, which really, it kept the game close to the first quarter, which if you really watched the first quarter and just watched half-court defense for the Minnesota Timberwolves, you would have thought this game was like 30-15 or 30-12 after the first quarter. But really, Thunder just did a good job forcing turnovers, getting out into transition. But the Timberwolves' set defense was really good. 3-point shooting was keeping Minnesota alive. I mean, Julius Randle was killing it from the 3-point line. Jaden McDaniels hit a 3. Mike Conley hit a 3. Ant hit a couple threes. But that quickly changed in this game. This game just completely flipped on Minnesota's head after the first half. First half, Timberwolves could not miss anything from the 3-point line, which was crazy because Julius Randle was 5 for 6 from the 3-point line after the first half, and I was like, dang, this is going to be a super close game if the Timberwolves can keep it up. The Thunder were still within 2 points at halftime, or 4 points, I think. They were down by 4 going into half. So even though the Timberwolves were shooting lights out from the 3-point line, the Thunder just kept it close. That's what they've been doing all year, is if they do get down, they're not getting blown out. That lead is not getting extended to 15, 20 points. At most, 10 points is a lot that the Thunder will let a lead get to. And in this game, they kept it close throughout, and then, especially in the first half, they kept it close, and then third quarter, just flipped that switch and turned it on. Fourth quarter, just continued that and just closed it out. But in quarter 2, Julius Randle was amazing when Anthony Edwards was out. And twisted his ankle, turned his ankle a little bit at the end of the first quarter, went back in the locker room and got it taped up. And Julius Randle, I think he hit 4 threes in a row, 3 or 4 threes in a row. Just kept it going, kept them close, and then OKC started to get better sets on the offensive end. That half-court defense from the first quarter did not translate into half-court defense in the second quarter because the Thunder, they were running pick and rolls, getting Ihart the ball, feeding him down low. He had a couple of dunks in a row. He shot 6 for 8 this game. all were super easy shots other than like one deep floater. But for him, that's an easy shot because he loves that shot. That is Isaiah Hartenstein's shot right there. OKC was getting in the paint at will in the second quarter. Shea was struggling against Minnesota's physicality in the first half, I felt like. When he was getting bumped and not getting a call, he was struggling to finish it at the rim. And they forced a couple turnovers. He had 2 turnovers this game. Not a lot, nothing crazy. But he was struggling a little bit against the Minnesota physicality. But then he turned it around in the third and fourth quarter like the whole Thunder team did. I put after the second quarter ended, I had Wolves can't rely on 3-point shooting. This is not a team that you can predominantly rely on guys like Julius Randle knocking down all of his threes, even though he led the league in three-pointers. That is not his best attribute. His best attribute is getting downhill, getting to the rim, forcing fouls, getting easy buckets at the rim, and getting energy for the Wolves by attacking the rim. So him settling for threes is not his best, even if he's making them like he was in the first half, but then in the second half he wasn't. At the end of the half, Shea was 2 for 13 and had 11 points, and then J-Dub and Chet combined for 8 points in the first half. I think Dub had 6 points and Chet had 2. And then Ant had 13 after the first half, and Randall had 20 on 5 for 6 from the three-point line. But then the third quarter is where everything changed. Outside of the first half, OKC had 22 paint points to Minnesota's 4. So it just really proved that Minnesota was reliant on the three-point shot. They weren't trying to get downhill. Ant had a couple where he was getting downhill, but he was kicking it out, and they were making it, so they just kept doing that. But then in the third quarter, this is where it all switched. Minnesota needed to be much more disciplined on the defensive end, but they continued to light it up from the arc, which they settled for too much. Third quarter, OKC outscored them 32-18, which really just it was a 4-point lead going into halftime for Minnesota. At the end of the third, it was a 10-point lead for OKC, and then they outscored them 38-22 in the fourth. So the third and fourth quarter, Minnesota had nothing going, whereas OKC had everything going. J-Dub was turning it up a little bit. I think he had 9 points in the quarter, so ended with 15, or Dub ended with 19 points, so he had 15 going in the fourth. 9 of them came in the third. Shea had 12 points and 5 for 8 in the quarter. He was getting his spots. He was aggressive. Ant had 5 points in the third, and then was a no-show in the fourth quarter. Had 0 points in the fourth quarter. And then the last 7 minutes of the third quarter was where OKC really turned that game around, a 20-5 run. So outscored them by 15 in the last 7 minutes, grew that lead to 10, and it just felt like there was no coming back for Minnesota. Especially Julius Randle had 0 points in the third quarter. Then comes out in the fourth quarter and had 8 points, but he only shot 13 times. And when he's 5 for 6 from the three-point line, you need him to take some more shots and just continue to be aggressive, which he did not show throughout the game. He was aggressive when Ant was out, but when they were both on the court, they were taking turns at being aggressive and not being aggressive together as a team. Jaden McDaniels fouled out at the end of the third quarter, which ruined some momentum for Minnesota, gave OKC some more free throws, and then the fourth quarter, the game again, like I've said multiple times, the game just completely flipped on Minnesota's head. OKC was hitting all their threes in the third and fourth quarter. They shot 11 for 21 this game, 52% for the field, and I mean they were just consistent on the offensive end. That's exactly what OKC has been all year. Even if they're down, they continue to be consistent on the offensive end, and they showed this in this game. Aggressiveness was lost from Ant and Randall. McDaniels fouled out, so his aggressiveness couldn't be shown. Chet had 3 dunks in a row and a 3, so he came alive in the fourth quarter, and then after that, Minnesota just said, we're sitting our guys, giving them some rest. So I think it was like 4 or 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter is when the game actually ended, because nobody of the starters of either team was in the game. Kenrich Williams came in, gave them some really solid minutes off the bench. He had 5 points in like 2 minutes on one of his stints. The bench unit for Minnesota, I mean, Naz Reid shot 1 for 11 and had 4 points. Dante, 3 for 14, 9 points. Nikhil, 3 for 11, 8 points. One of the best bench units, bench 8-man rotations in the league, and the 3 bench players shot a combined 5 for 36, I believe. Somewhere around there, 5 for 36. So just not a great game. A horrendous game from the bench. No sugarcoating it. It was a horrendous game off the bench for all their guys. And then the Thunder bench, Caruso gave you 9. Isaiah Joe gave you 7. Aaron Wiggins had 2. Casey Wallace had 3. Kenrich Williams had 8. I mean, they didn't go crazy on the offensive end, but they were 3 for 3, 3 for 4, 1 for 2, 1 for 3, 1 for 3. They kept it close. And when you're dealing with a really strong, solid bench unit like Minnesota, as long as your bench unit can just match them, keep it within distance, and the starters are playing super consistent throughout, you're going to win these games. And that's all OKC was. They were just consistent throughout the game, and there was just nothing outside of continued amazing three-point shooting from Minnesota in the first half leading into the second half that could have won Minnesota this game, because once OKC went on that 20-5 run in the third quarter, they just never turned back. They didn't let the lead dwindle. They just kept it super solid throughout, and OKC never looked back. Now, for Game 2 of this series, because we've had 2 games, OKC last night beat the Minnesota Timberwolves again in a 118-115 battle, or 118-103 battle, sorry. This was a much better game from Minnesota, but OKC, again, just really, really consistent. First quarter from this game, Ant was so much better at attacking the rim and then kicking out, which, again, Jaden McDaniels had 2 threes in the first quarter. So he was 2 for 3 in the first quarter from the 3-point line. Excuse me. But it was just a constant attacking from Ant and Mike Conley. They were getting in the rim, getting 2 feet in the paint, and then kicking out, or they were going right up with it. But Julius Randle in the first quarter had a possession where he tried to do the same thing. He drove right to the basket. 3 straight layups were either blocked or heavily contested in one possession because he just kept going up with it instead of kicking it out and just resetting the possession. You had a new shot clock of 14 seconds. Kick it out. You're not scoring over Chet and Ihart in the paint, and they showed you that. And Julius Randle this whole game just really struggled from inside the paint. He was 2 for 11 in this game, but 2 for 8 from inside the paint. So it was just a really bad showing from Julius Randle. it kind of reminded me of a New York Knicks Julius Randle playoff game. In the first quarter of this game 2, though, Thunder were getting to their spots early, which was another sign that the Thunder, even if they're down going into half, they were going to keep it close. But this game throughout, they won. They won both the first and second quarter by 4 points. Went into the half up by 8. But I mean, iHeart was getting to his floater. Shea was getting to his baseline shot, mid-range shots. J-Dub was getting to his turnaround, fadeaway, mid-range shots. All this was in the first quarter. So their guys were getting to their spots early, getting comfortable, getting confident, and the Timberwolves just really couldn't do anything about it. And just something I've been preaching throughout this series is Rudy Gobert needs to own the paint. He has not owned the paint in either game 1 or game 2. He had 9 rebounds in game 2 and 1 block and 5 points. Now, that is a much better game than game 1. But Rudy Gobert, this is a team that is very reliant on getting to the paint in the OKC Thunder. You have to own it. Chet is not better than you in the paint right now. Chet is more athletic. You have strength and size on both iHeart and Chet Holmgren. You need to own the paint. J-Dub is getting rebounds over Rudy Gobert. He's attacking Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert is, at this point, becoming obsolete in the offense. The Thunder did the same exact thing with Zach Edey in round 1. They said, you may be 7'4", you may be stronger than iHeart and Chet and anybody on our team, but we're going to attack you. We're going to put you in every position. We're going to put you in uncomfortable situations that you don't want to be in, and we're just going to continue to do that because we know you're not going to be able to handle us, and you're not confident enough in yourself to own the paint. Rudy Gobert needs to be more confident in himself and needs to own the paint. And I thought that Ant and Randall were forcing it a little bit much in the first quarter. Randall much more than Ant because his shots were just blatantly not going to go in. They were heavily contested. Like, if you play 2K, those are 100% smothered shots right there that he was taking. At the end of the first quarter, Randall was 0 for 4 and had 0 points. Ant was 4 for 10 and had 8 points. So he was aggressive. He was kicking out to Jaden McDaniels, which was part of his aggression. And Jaden McDaniels 2 for 3, 3-point for the 3-point line. But for the OKC Thunder, like I said, they were getting their spots. Shea, 8 points, 3 for 3 from the field. Dub had 6 points, 3 for 4 from the field. Chet had 8 points, 2 for 5 from the field. So Chet and J-Dub already passed their first half scoring in game 1 in quarter 1. And then second quarter, again, OKC was just another consistent quarter from them. Bench unit was much better in game 2 for the Timberwolves. I mean, Naz Reid ended the game with 10 points, 3 for 8 shooting. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 17 points, 5 for 8 shooting, 3 for 4 from the field, from the 3-point line. Dante, 8 points, 3 for 8, 2 for 6 from the 3-point line. Much better game for the bench unit from the Minnesota Timberwolves. This was another really solid start from the 3-point line for Minnesota. That dwindled again in the second half. OKC they've just been playing. They're not getting out of their rhythm, and they're not letting Minnesota force them into anything that they don't want to be in. They are really getting to their spots well. They're getting their shots, and they're playing their game. That's all OKC has been doing throughout this playoffs and throughout this Minnesota series. Minnesota, shot their first free throw with like a minute and a half left. So signs of them not getting to the free throw line, but also that's partially because they just first quarter they were attacking the paint well. They weren't getting any whistles. Second quarter they went away from attacking the rim and started to rely more on the 3-point shot. Randall, after the first half, 2 points, 1 for 5 shooting. Ant had 16, but 1 for 7 from the 3-point line. Their bench had 18 points. They were 9 for 24 from the 3-point line, and they shot 1 free throw. For the OKC Thunder, Shea had 19 points. J-Dub had 10 points. Chet had 11 points. They had 9 bench points, and they were shooting 4 for 20 from the 3-point line, and they had shot 10 free throws. If you look at that, bench points was not going OKC's way, which went their way in Game 1. 3-point shot, Minnesota again started off really well, but OKC was up by 8 going into the half. So it just wasn't a pure dominant offensive game from Minnesota like you would have expected seeing in some of their stats in the first half. And in the third quarter, OKC outscored them by 14, grew that lead to 18, or grew that lead to 22. OKC in the second half, their defense turned up again. They were forcing really tough shots from Minnesota. Minnesota was getting in the paint, and they were starting to get some transition buckets, which was a good sign of what to come in this game. But then OKC also started to get into transition, and they started to force the tempo to get a little higher. And then one thing that you can highlight all year from the OKC Thunder, having such smart defensive players like Caruso, Cason Wallace, Lou Dort, J-Dub, Chet, Shea even, they just have such good rotations. There is not a moment on the court, on the defensive end, where they're not moving, they're not crashing, they're not stopping people in the paint. They live off of just flying around the court. I don't really think that there is a team that I have seen have such a good defensive rotations and defensive movement outside of maybe the Spurs from like Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Kawhi. Those teams were really well coached. First off, very well coached. Mark Daigneault is a very amazing coach. And defensive-wise, so much effort from OKC, which you don't see a lot of from a lot of teams. And, I mean, their amazing rotations partially led to some open kickouts, but there was also some open kickouts that you thought were going to see, and then Shea just comes out of nowhere and just grabs that thing with one hand and just flies down the court and gets a transition bucket. 19-6 run from OKC in the middle of the third quarter, and then a 10-2 run to end the third quarter. So 29-8 run to end the quarter to the last 7 minutes for the OKC Thunder. After the third, Ant had 24 points, 9 for 20 from the field. Randall had 6 points, 2 for 11 for the field. They had 2 bench points in the quarter. Shea had 30 for OKC. Chet had 18. 8 bench points in the quarter from OKC. So their bench came back alive and kept the bench points super, super close. And then 12 points off of turnovers for OKC is another highlight that you have to look at. But OKC, again, like I've been saying this whole time talking about this series, is just they don't get down, they don't lose confidence, and they are not a team you want to let stay in the game. And they are a team that's just going to stay in the game, what they've showed from the first 2 games. Even in the Nuggets series and the Grizzlies series and all year long, they don't get down by a astronomical amount or any amount that puts the game in jeopardy of not being able to pull it back. It's just amazing to watch how the Thunder are always within striking distance of the team that they're playing against if they're down. If they're not down, they're usually putting the game out of striking distance from the other team. So it's just crazy to watch. And then the fourth quarter, only quarter that Minnesota won, but OKC, again, didn't let that lead dwindle to an amount that put the game in jeopardy in the last couple of minutes. Good offensive start for Minnesota, and they were making OKC foul. And this was without Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards. And Julius Randle in this game, I don't believe he played a single fourth quarter minute. He might have played like 2 minutes, but he did not play at all in the fourth quarter. Minnesota was keeping it close, but they were making the others beat them. They were pressing Shea at the half court line, which you kind of have to do against him, and they were making others make plays and make shots, which they weren't making for a while. But then again, they just kept it. OKC didn't get down, didn't lose confidence. They just kept going and kept going and kept going. They just kept pushing along. Shea picked up his fifth foul with 3 minutes left, but that didn't come back to bite them. And, I mean, the game ended. Ant had 32, so he had 8 points in the fourth quarter. Jaden McDaniels had 22. Julius Randle ended the game with 6 points. And, again, Mike Conley, Rudy Gobert, two guys that are in the starting lineup that I know Rudy Gobert, you're not expecting to get a lot from him, but if he could get 10, 12 points and own the paint, you put yourself in such a better position to win the game. And then Mike Conley, again, like, I don't know what it is with Mike Conley, but it feels like he's so worried about what he's doing on the court. He's putting up floaters, but they're so long and he's putting so much strength behind it. He doesn't need to be doing that. So Mike Conley needs to fix his confidence a little bit. And then for the Thunder, Shea ended with 38 points. J-Dub had 26. Chet had 22. Ihart only had 6, and Dort had 9. Then off the bench, Caruso had 9. Casey Wallace had 8. Again, this is a game that Minnesota could have won if Julius Randle showed up to play that day. But that's been the OKC series so far, and I had Minnesota winning it before, but I'm really on the verge of picking I'm picking the Thunder to win this series. They've been I don't know why I picked against the Thunder. I had confidence in Ant and I had confidence in Julius Randle, but after that Julius Randle game in Game 2, my confidence just completely left from the Timberwolves, and I think this is going to be a quick series. I think the Thunder, originally I had Minnesota winning it in 7, which is still a possibility, but there's a really strong chance that OKC goes out there and they win this series in 5, because if Minnesota can't win both games at home, going into Game 5 in OKC, having to win that game to keep the series alive, they have no chance. So I'm not going to completely move because I want to stick with my guns of Anthony Edwards, and I want to stick with Minnesota. So I'm still going to say Minnesota in 7, but there's a very strong chance that this series ends in 5 in OKC. Now, final 15 minutes, we have probably the best game of the playoffs and maybe of the season between two teams that have a long history of playoff battles and not liking each other. The Indiana Pacers versus the New York Knicks, Game 1 in Madison Square Garden, was fireworks. It was a whole movie. This game, I was speechless from this game. I'm not even going to lie. A 138-135 victory from the Indiana Pacers, stealing game 1 in overtime. And I said this on Wednesday Night Sports Flash, if anybody was listening to it, that Tyrese Halliburton was going to take the most clutch player from Jalen Brunson in this series. And from game 1, that's looking like it might be true. Just a full game breakdown. I have a lot of notes from this game. Start from quarter 1. Cat 2 for 2 from the three-point line. Already hit more threes than he did all last series against the Celtics. But the Pacers, 8 for 8 to start the game. Their first possession, their 9th possession was the first possession that didn't end in a bucket for them. And it was because of a turnover. And then they were 9 for 9 after that. Pacers, that pace, Pacers, I get it. It sounds funny. But, if you watch this game, it was back and forth. And the Knicks were playing with the Pacers' tempo, which played into what the Pacers wanted to do. If the Pacers can play with this tempo all series, it's going to be very tough for the Knicks to win this series. Tyrese Halliburton was in attack mode the whole game from the jump. And this is one thing that has been a hindrance of Tyrese Halliburton pretty much his whole career is he's not super aggressive in moments that he should be. But this game, he showed he was aggressive throughout. Knicks were handling the pressure well, and again, the two biggest outliers in this series for both teams. For the Knicks, it's their offensive rebounding. For the Pacers, it's the pace they play with and the ability to make and hit shots. They lead the playoffs in field goal percentage and three-point percentage, whereas the Knicks are one of the top teams in offensive rebounding. This was going to be the battle. And in game 1, both sides kind of prevailed from what their strength is. These teams are so close. If you look at the stats from the postseason, these teams are literally like neck and neck in every category besides offensive rebounding and field goal percentage and three-point percentage. But 14-5 run to end the quarter for the Knicks. And Mitchell Robinson in his first 3 to 4 minutes on the court, two offensive rebounds. So it looked like the Knicks, they handled the pressure well. They were going to slow it down a little bit. Mitch came in the game, gave them really solid minutes. Jalen Brunson had 9 after the first quarter. Cat had 8. McHale had 8. But then for the Pacers, Miles Turner had 11. I think he was 5 for 5, which he wasn't great after the first quarter. Hallie had 4 points, 5 assists. He was setting the pace. He was just getting the offense moving throughout. And then second quarter started. Again, endless pace from the Pacers, no matter the lineup. They throw T.J. McConnell in there just as fast as when Tyrese Halliburton's in there. They throw Thomas Bryant in there just as fast as when Miles Turner's in there. This team is going to run, and the Knicks are going to have to keep up with it. The Pacers, even when they were down, were forcing the pace. When they were up, forcing the pace. So it's going to be a conversation of can the Knicks first keep up with that, because I think Game 3 and Game 4 will be telling, because at that point, the Knicks are going to be worn out from just constant sprinting back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And the first quarter and a half, first 2 quarters, the Knicks' three-point shooting was electric. They were 5 for 8, and they were keeping up with the pace. They were playing the game the Pacers wanted to play, but they were doing it very, very well. And then 13-1 run in the middle of the third, or middle of the second for New York. That kind of grew the lead a little bit. At the end of the first half, the Knicks were up by 7 points. Still a really close game, and that's where the pace comes into advantage. Keeping that up, you can dwindle the lead very quickly. And then after the end of the first quarter, JB had 18, Cat had 15, 3 for 3 from the three-point line. McHale had 12, and then Hallie had 14, 10 in the quarter. And then the Knicks bench was really good in the first half. They were good throughout the game, but in the first half, they matched Indiana's bench super well. But then third quarter, fourth quarter is where the game started to get spicy. Third quarter, early, unsuccessful challenge from the Knicks, which came back to bite them in this game. I believe it was on an out-of-bounds call, I'm not exactly sure. I believe it was on an out-of-bounds call early in the third quarter, which came back to bite them. Aaron Nesmith, and Jalen Brunson was getting super physical. JB was cooking him. I'm not even going to lie. I thought Nesmith would be able to slow him down a little bit, but he really was not able to slow him down at all. But I do want to say, I think if you're going to be upset with Shea foul baiting, you have to be just as upset with Jalen Brunson. You can't put into conversation height and size. Shea being 6'5" and Jalen Brunson being 6'1", 6'2". He is putting himself into positions where he is grabbing the defender's arm, pulling it into him, and forcing fouls. If you're going to be mad at Shea foul baiting, you have to be just as mad at Jalen Brunson. Can't be a one-sided conversation when it comes to that. Knicks fans especially cannot have that. You cannot bring up Shea and say you don't like Shea because he foul baits when you have Jalen Brunson on your team. Brunson then picked up his fourth foul on an offensive foul with 5 minutes left in the third quarter. So he had to sit for a little bit. Second chance points from Mitchell Robinson was huge in the third quarter, first half and third quarter especially. And JB, 9 points in the quarter, but the three-point shooting for the Knicks was starting to dwindle, starting to flutter. And then Hallie had, again, 9 points in the quarter. He was just super aggressive throughout the game. Fourth quarter, though, this is where it became, this might be the best fourth quarter of the playoffs. And I'm still going to agree this is the best game of the playoffs so far. Brunson picked up his fifth 2 minutes into the fourth quarter. OG then had 5 super quick points, forced a timeout. Then, a 14-0 run from the Knicks without Jalen Brunson. And they did a great job at extending the lead with no Jalen Brunson because Karl-Anthony Towns was super aggressive. OG was super aggressive. McHale, he dwindled, but he was still kind of aggressive. Cameron Payne hit 2 threes this game. He hasn't hit a 3 since game 1 of the Detroit series. Miles McBride had 9 points off the bench. He was super solid. But then it became clutch time. That 5-minute mark hit, and the Pacers. Aaron Nesmith had a legacy game. Checked in with 5 minutes left in the game. Then hit 5 straight threes. Or I believe it was 5 or 6 threes. Either one. He had 15 or 18 points just from himself. He was lights out in the fourth quarter. Tyrese Halliburton, it's so fun to watch the Indiana Pacers play basketball. But then the Pacers were much better in the clutch. This was something that I was telling people that are Knicks fans that this is why I'm picking the Pacers. They are so much better in the clutch and have proven that than the New York Knicks have. Knicks pride themselves on being a clutch team. But you come up against the Indiana Pacers who are just as clutch as you, and they outplay you in the clutch because they're used to the tempo they play with. The Knicks, not used to that tempo, they are dragging themselves to the finish line. OG really struggled this game, having to deal with the tempo. And then missed free throws. OG missed a free throw, then made the second one. And then we saw the Tyrese Halliburton game-tying shot, which everybody thought he gamed it. Everybody thought that was a game winner. The bounce, yeah, that was a crazy, crazy bounce. But if you really look back at that play, it hit back rim and it went straight up. That shot was always going in. And obviously, Tyrese did hit the choke celly like Reggie Miller. And I'm so glad that didn't come back and the Pacers lost in overtime, because they would be talking about him like Jason Tatum, which, again, I don't understand the hate to Jason Tatum for like recreating a Boston Celtics legend, but we don't clown on Tyrese Halliburton for doing the same thing as Reggie Miller. So, again, another one-sided thing that is annoying with NBA media. And then overtime, yeah, Knicks fans, you could be mad about the missed goaltending, but you shouldn't have been in the place in overtime at all. That is a super close call. Yeah, some people online calling it a blatant goaltend. Yeah, if you see it from the camera angle behind the backboard, that is a blatant goaltend. If you're a ref, 4-5 bodies in your way, you're trying to look at the ball, the rim also in your way, and they barely get it right after it. It wasn't a blatant call unless you look at it from that behind the backboard camera. And then the Pacers come down, hit a three. Then Obi Toppin gets fouled on his dunk. So enough of the Knicks fans whining and crying about the missed goaltending. You guys lost the game. That's all it is. You shouldn't have put yourself in the position to be in overtime after you were leading. So don't be upset that the refs missed a goaltending call that you don't like because it's against you. Where the Knicks, let's remember the Knicks, Game 3, I believe, of the Detroit Pistons series. What happened there? Yeah, a missed call that probably would have lost you that series. Be happy you're in the Eastern Conference Finals. Be happy you still have a chance to go to the NBA Finals. You shouldn't even have been there if we're talking about missed calls. Jalen Brunson flopping to the floor every time he gets the chance. Let's not talk about that. I got Pacers in 6. That's all I'm saying. This is going to be a super fun series to watch throughout. It's going to be an amazing series. The transition and Game 2 is going to be really telling if the Knicks can come back with some sort of energy, and because that was a demoralizing loss from if you're a Knicks player and a Knicks fan. You were leading such late into the game and just a collapse. But that's all I have for today. Beyond the Scoreboard, got a little heated from the Knicks fans, but we got Knicks basketball tonight, conference finals throughout, and we'll see you next week. Be on the lookout for a show on Sunday or Monday that I'll be doing with a good friend of mine from back home who is a Spurs fan. We're going to be going through a Spurs offseason guide. This has been Beyond the Scoreboard presented by RDSE, and I'm your host, Michael Lyons.